Imagine a galaxy that once stood in awe of humanity, only to watch them vanish. Wars raged, alliances crumbled, and yet, the absence of humankind left an undeniable void, one filled with both fear and relief. Some species rejoiced, believing their greatest rival had finally fallen. Others worried, knowing that something as formidable as humanity never truly disappears. And they were right. Because now, humanity is back, and the galaxy is powerless to stop them. But what happened? Why did humans vanish in the first place? And more importantly, what makes their return so terrifying? Every great journey starts with a few brave explorers. Right now, HFY Chronicles-849 is just beginning, and your support means everything. If you enjoy unraveling the mysteries of the universe, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us grow this community together. Centuries ago, humanity stood at the pinnacle of innovation, strength, and adaptability. They weren't the strongest species, they weren't the fastest, but what they lacked in raw power, they made up for with something far more dangerous: ingenuity. They could adapt to any environment, wield technology like an extension of their own bodies, and, most terrifyingly, they never, ever gave up. When faced with war, they outmaneuvered enemies. When facing extinction, they evolved. But then, something happened. Humanity disappeared. Entire colonies were abandoned overnight. Warships drifted aimlessly through the void, their crews missing. Even the once mighty Terran homeworld fell silent. The galaxy speculated endlessly. Some believed it was a self-inflicted catastrophe, an experiment gone wrong, or an AI rebellion. Others whispered of something more sinister, an external force that wiped them out. Regardless, the message was clear: humanity was gone. For a while, the galaxy flourished. Empires that once cowered before human fleets expanded into former Terran territories. The Galactic Council, long overshadowed by human influence, now reigned supreme. The absence of Earth's warriors meant peace. At least, that's what they told themselves. But not everyone was convinced. Deep in the ruins of human space, strange signals began to surface. A whisper in the darkness. Codes that defied translation. Entire fleets sent to investigate, never returned. Then, the unthinkable happened. One by one, human colonies, once ghost towns, began to show signs of life. Distant outposts, thought to be lifeless, activated. And then came the ships. At first, they were dismissed as rogue vessels, remnants of a long-lost people. But these weren't old, battered relics. These ships were new, advanced, and piloted. Humanity wasn't just back, they had been preparing. The first encounter wasn't a war, it was a message. A single, chilling transmission that echoed through the stars. You thought we were gone. You were wrong. What happened next sent the entire galaxy into chaos, panic. That was the first reaction across the galaxy. Humanity's sudden return wasn't a slow trickle of survivors or a desperate attempt to reclaim lost ground. It was a coordinated resurgence. The message that echoed through the void wasn't a warning. It was a declaration. The empires that had once thrived in humanity's absence scrambled to understand what they were dealing with. Were these truly the same humans they had known? Or something different? Governments sent reconnaissance teams to investigate, but what they found sent shockwaves through the galactic community. Human colonies, once lifeless ruins, were now operational. Entire worlds that had been barren for centuries were teeming with activity, as if they had never been abandoned in the first place. Cities once choked with dust now gleamed with new infrastructure. Energy grids pulsed with power. Defense systems were online. And then there were the ships. These weren't the old Terran warships of legend, the battle-worn dreadnoughts that once shattered fleets. No. These were something new, faster, stronger, designed with technology that no known species could replicate. When the first scouting vessel from the Zelvaran Dominion approached a reclaimed human colony, its sensors were immediately jammed. Advanced countermeasures blinded its systems, rendering the ship helpless. And then, in a single moment, it was gone. Not destroyed, not boarded, just gone. as if it had never existed. The Dominion tried to cover it up, but the truth leaked out. Something had changed. Humanity hadn't merely returned, they had evolved. Theories spread like wildfire. Some believed that humans had gone into hiding, refining their technology in secret, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Others feared they had discovered something beyond conventional understanding, perhaps an ancient force or a breakthrough in physics that granted them untold power. A few even whispered the most terrifying possibility of all, that humanity had never truly left, that they had been watching the entire time, manipulating events from the shadows. Then came the first true test. The Volcari, Republic, an aggressive expansionist species that had laid claim to dozens of former human colonies, refused to acknowledge this so-called human resurgence. They sent a fleet, over 400 warships, to a world once known as Epsilon Prime, a former Terran colony they had ruled for generations. Their orders were simple: crush any resistance. Send a message to these new humans that the galaxy belonged to the species who had claimed it in their absence. But as the Volcari Armada entered the system, something strange happened. Their ship's communications flickered. Their targeting systems glitched. Star charts warped, as if the very fabric of space was being rewritten. Then, without warning, the attack began. From the darkness, human ships emerged, silent, cold, efficient. There was no grand speech, no calls for surrender, no demands. The battle was over before the Volcari even realized they were fighting one. Human vessels tore through their ranks with precision, their weapons striking critical systems with mathematical perfection. The Volcari's shields were useless. Their armor may as well have been paper. Within minutes, a fleet that had terrorized the galaxy for over a century was reduced to debris, its remnants left to drift as a warning. For the first time in galactic history, an entire empire knew what it felt like to be powerless. And the worst part? Humanity hadn't even broken a sweat. Word spread faster than light. The Volcari Republic, once feared for its ruthless conquests, had been obliterated in mere minutes. Their warships, some of the most heavily armed vessels in the galaxy, had been reduced to smoldering wreckage without firing a single coordinated shot. Survivors who managed to escape spoke in hushed, panicked voices about what they had seen. Not just the speed and precision of human attacks, but something far more terrifying: the way the humans fought. They hadn't come to negotiate. They hadn't demanded territory. They hadn't even broadcast their intentions. The battle had been cold, calculated, almost surgical. It was as if they weren't simply fighting an enemy, but conducting an experiment, a test of their new capabilities. And the Volcari had failed. The galactic community was thrown into chaos. The major empires convened emergency meetings, each one desperate to understand what was happening. How had humanity survived? Where had they gone? How had they returned with technology that defied explanation? And most crucially, what did they want? Old records were unsealed, classified reports analyzed. Ancient battlefield footage from the last days of human presence was studied frame by frame. But none of it explained what the galaxy was now facing. The humans of the past had been formidable, yes, but not invincible. They had bled, struggled, and clawed their way to power. Like any other species, they had won wars not through overwhelming force, but through strategy, resilience, and an uncanny ability to turn the tide even in the darkest moments. But this was different. The humans who had returned were no longer playing by the old rules. Their ships moved like shadows, slipping in and out of detection as if they controlled the very fabric of reality. Their weapons struck with such precision that entire fleets were dismantled in the blink of an eye. Their technology defied known physics: energy barriers that could absorb firepower capable of shattering moons, propulsion systems that moved through space without detectable thrust, artificial intelligences that reacted faster than any organic mind could comprehend. Theories ran wild. Some believed humanity had achieved a singularity, a point where their technology had advanced beyond the need for biological minds. Others speculated that they had discovered something more, something forbidden. Perhaps an ancient force, a lost technology from a precursor race, or even a method of manipulating reality itself. But there was one theory that sent chills through the most powerful leaders in the galaxy. What if humanity had simply evolved? What if their disappearance hadn't been the result of an external force, but an internal decision? A deliberate retreat into the unknown, a self-imposed exile to push their species to the next stage of evolution. What if, for centuries, they had been waiting, watching, growing stronger, until the galaxy had become weak enough for them to return? Fear gripped every empire, every kingdom, every species. The galactic community had spent centuries reshaping itself in humanity's absence, believing the threat was gone. But now, the same species they had once feared was back, and they weren't interested in diplomacy. They weren't here to make alliances, negotiate treaties, or reclaim their lost territory. No, this was something else entirely. And then, the next blow came. Not in the form of war, but something far worse. The galactic economy collapsed. Humanity didn't just return with warships and technology. They returned with knowledge. And in the blink of an eye, everything the galaxy thought it understood about commerce, resources, and power crumbled. Human trade networks thought to be long dead, reactivated overnight. Entire star systems that had once relied on Terran infrastructure found themselves obsolete, their economies crushed under the sheer efficiency of human advancements. Galactic markets crashed as human-developed technologies rendered entire industries worthless. The message was clear: humanity didn't need to conquer the galaxy. They had already won. The true horror wasn't the destruction of fleets or the fall of empires. It was the realization that humanity had already infiltrated every aspect of galactic civilization. As panicked leaders scrambled for answers, a terrifying pattern emerged. Entire star systems, ones assumed to have been abandoned for centuries, were discovered to be thriving under human control. These weren't hidden bases or scattered survivors eking out a desperate existence. These were full-fledged, self-sustaining civilizations, operating in complete secrecy right under the galaxy's nose. Massive industrial worlds, built within the husks of dead planets. Forge worlds that had been strip-mined of all resources, yet now gleamed with vast automated factories. Research stations orbiting neutron stars, where weapons of impossible design were being tested. How had no one seen this? How had humanity managed to build an empire in the shadows without a single species noticing? The answer was worse than anyone had feared. They had never truly left. For centuries, humanity had existed in the blind spots of galactic civilization. Every major empire, every dominant species, had unknowingly been host to human sleeper colonies, hidden facilities and deep space stations buried in the dark void between stars. They had observed, adapted, and learned. They had watched as the galaxy moved on, as new powers rose and fell, as species fought over the remnants of a world they believed was dead, and all the while, humanity had been preparing. The realization sent shockwaves through the most powerful nations in the galaxy. Every empire launched emergency investigations into their own territory, desperate to uncover hidden human installations. And to their horror, they found them. Not just a few, not just in isolated systems, everywhere. Massive underground cities, hidden beneath the crust of barren moons. Deep space colonies shrouded in cloaking technology beyond anything ever seen. Entire asteroid belts converted into mobile production hubs, crafting weapons and starships in complete secrecy. The worst part? These weren't just old relics of a forgotten civilization. They were active, functioning, expanding. Then, the final nail in the coffin came. Humanity spoke. It wasn't a declaration of war. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't even a challenge. It was a simple message, broadcast in every known language across every communication network in the galaxy. We have returned. That was it. No demands, no threats. Just a statement of fact. The galaxy erupted into chaos. Some species called for immediate surrender, arguing that resistance was futile against an enemy who had clearly been planning this moment for centuries. Others, fueled by arrogance or desperation, rallied their fleets, convinced they could still stand against the tide. Secret meetings were held in the deepest corridors of power, as rulers debated whether to unite against the human resurgence, or attempt to align with them in the hopes of survival. But it was too late. Humanity's presence was no longer a question. They were everywhere. They had been everywhere. And now, for the first time in centuries, they were stepping out of the shadows. And then, the most unthinkable event in recorded history occurred. One of the 5 great empires of the galaxy, the Zelvoran Dominion, an empire that had stood unchallenged for over 5,000 years, vanished. Overnight. No war, no battles, no distress signals, just silence. Every colony, every military installation, every ship, every citizen, gone. As if they had never existed. Their worlds were still there, their cities untouched, but not a single trace of life remained. Not even bodies, not even ruins of a battle. Just emptiness. It was as if humanity had erased them from existence itself. The remaining galactic empires were thrown into an even deeper panic. Had humanity discovered some kind of superweapon? Had they unlocked the ability to rewrite reality itself? Was this some form of war that no one else could even comprehend? Theories spread, but the truth was terrifyingly simple. Humanity was no longer interested in war. They had transcended it. And now, they were making it clear. Resistance wasn't just futile. It wasn't even an option. Panic gripped the galaxy, like a dying star collapsing into a black hole. The disappearance of the Zelvoran Dominion sent shockwaves through every empire, every ruling council, every species. Billions of beings across the stars awoke to a terrifying new reality, one where the most powerful forces in the galaxy could simply cease to exist without explanation. The great war fleets of the remaining empires scrambled into defensive positions, deploying every last ship, weapon, and soldier to fortify their borders. But it was futile, and they knew it. How do you fight an enemy that doesn't announce itself, that doesn't demand surrender, that doesn't even acknowledge you as a threat? The truth was undeniable now. Humanity had returned as something far beyond what the galaxy had known. Yet the most terrifying revelation was still to come. As desperate leaders scoured their archives for anything, any clue, any pattern, they found something chilling buried deep in the historical records. Humanity's withdrawal had never been an accident. It had never been the result of some great calamity, as so many had assumed. It had been deliberate. Centuries ago, the final transmissions from the last known human territories had been dismissed as the ravings of a dying empire, warnings of the next phase, of transcendence, of the last necessary retreat. No one had taken them seriously. They had assumed humanity had simply collapsed under the weight of its own ambition. But now, with the benefit of hindsight, a new picture emerged. Humanity had never fallen. They had ascended. They had left the known galaxy behind not in defeat, but in preparation. The conflicts of the past, the wars they had fought, the enemies they had faced, none of it had been their true focus. They had been playing a long game, one that stretched across centuries, perhaps even millennia. And now, the results of that game were unfolding before the galaxy's terrified eyes. Across the void, human ships began to appear in places that should have been impossible. Not through hyperlanes, not through wormholes, but as if they had simply stepped into existence. Their vessels, once recognizable for their brute force engineering and sheer firepower, had become something else entirely. Sleek, silent, unbound by conventional physics, and worst of all, they still had not fired a single shot in anger. The true battle had never been one of weapons. It had been one of inevitability. The final proof came when the Galactic Coalition, a desperate alliance of the remaining great powers, attempted to open diplomatic channels with humanity. They begged for negotiations, for a treaty, for anything that might slow the tide, and for the first time since their return, humanity responded. A single message. You misunderstand. We are not your enemy. We never were. Confusion swept through, the highest levels of power. What did they mean? If they were not here for conquest, for war, for vengeance, then why? The answer came in the form of a single human envoy, a lone figure appearing in the heart of the Galactic Council chamber, as if they had simply materialized there. Not in a ship, not escorted by guards, just there, as though the barriers of time and space meant nothing to them. They looked human, almost. Their form was perfect, their movements smooth and deliberate, their eyes holding an intelligence that felt endless. They spoke with calm certainty. You have spent centuries fearing our return. You assumed we would come back as conquerors, as warlords, as destroyers. But your assumptions were wrong. They raised a hand, and reality itself seemed to ripple around them. The room darkened, and in its place, a vision emerged. The past. The moment humanity had vanished from the known galaxy. But now, the truth was laid bare. It had not been a defeat. It had been an exodus. They had left, not because they were driven out, but because they had outgrown the galaxy as it was. They had stepped beyond the boundaries of known space, beyond the limits of what was possible, to forge something greater. For them, the galaxy had become a cradle too small for what they were becoming. And now, they had returned, not to conquer, but to elevate. Your time of war, of empire, of struggle, it is over, the envoy said. We do not wish to rule. We do not wish to destroy. But the path you walk is unsustainable. We offer you a choice. The chamber fell silent. Every leader, every ruler, every being watching held their breath. Join us. Not as subjects, not as slaves, but as something more. The galaxy had always seen humanity as a threat, a force of war, of defiance, of chaos. But the truth was so much greater. Humanity had become the architects of a new reality, and now they were offering the galaxy a seat at the table. But would they accept it? The chamber stood in stunned silence. The words hung in the air like a cosmic riddle, sending a wave of unease through every ruler, every dignitary, every species that had gathered. Join them? It was a proposition that defied all logic, all expectation. The galaxy had spent centuries preparing for humanity's wrath. They had fortified their borders, built weapons of unimaginable power, and forged uneasy alliances under the assumption that humanity would return as an unstoppable force of war. But now, in a single moment, that assumption was shattered. The human envoy stood at the center of it all, utterly calm, their very presence an enigma. No visible armor, no weapons, no protection, and yet, none dared to move against them. The silence broke as the prime speaker of the Varic Empire, one of the oldest and most influential species in the galaxy, stepped forward. Their voice, once filled with pride and certainty, now trembled with uncertainty. What exactly are you offering? The human smiled, a simple gesture, but one that carried a weight no one could define. Freedom, they said. A murmur swept through the chamber. Freedom? From what? The answer came not in words, but in the vision that unfolded before them. The walls of the chamber seemed to dissolve, replaced by a vast expanse of stars. A simulation, yet more real than anything technology could produce. Planets, civilizations, entire histories played out before them. They saw their own worlds as if from an omniscient vantage point. And then, they saw the truth. For all their technological marvels, for all their interstellar conquests, the galactic civilizations had become stagnant. Empires ruled by fear of the unknown, borders drawn with paranoia rather than vision. Wars fought over resources that were, in reality, insignificant compared to the true vastness of the universe. They had been trapped, not by external threats, but by their own limited understanding of existence. You believe yourselves powerful? The human envoy said, their voice echoing across the chamber. But power is an illusion when you do not understand the nature of reality itself. With a wave of their hand, the vision shifted. They saw humanity, not as it had been, but as it had become, a civilization untethered by the constraints of time and space. Cities that defied gravity, existing simultaneously across multiple dimensions. Vast networks of thought, where knowledge flowed as naturally as breath. No hunger, no war, no division. We left because we saw the cycle, the envoy continued. We saw what lay ahead, a future of stagnation, of war, of endless repetition. We refused to be bound by it. Their expression turned solemn. And now we offer you the same choice. A heavy pause followed. The implications were staggering. If what humanity claimed was true, they had not only advanced beyond the galactic civilizations, but had ascended to an entirely new state of existence. Their technology, their understanding of the universe, everything they had achieved was incomprehensible. And yet, they were not demanding surrender. They were not seeking conquest. They were offering salvation. But what did that mean? The Chancellor of the Zorath hegemony, a species known for their ruthless pragmatism, narrowed his reptilian eyes. And if we refuse? The human envoy met his gaze without hesitation. Then nothing changes, they said. You will continue as you always have. You will fight your wars. You will build your empires. You will struggle. We will not interfere. A murmur of disbelief rippled through the crowd. So you return, wielding power beyond our understanding, another leader spoke, their voice laced with skepticism. And you expect us to believe that you have no intention of ruling us? The humans sighed. Not in frustration, but in something deeper. Understanding. You still think in terms of power and rule, they said softly. But we moved beyond that long ago. Another wave of their hand, and the vision shifted again. This time, they saw a future. One path showed the galaxy as it was now. Fractured, chaotic, destined for decline. Wars escalating until civilizations burned themselves out. A slow, inevitable extinction. Not from a single catastrophe, but from a million small choices leading to the same bleak end. But then, the other path. A galaxy where species coexisted, not in fragile truces but in true unity. A civilization that spanned not just the stars, but the very fabric of reality. A place where knowledge was limitless, where existence itself had evolved beyond mortal constraints. You were never our enemy, the human envoy said. You were our past. The weight of their words crushed the chamber into silence. For centuries, the galaxy had feared humanity's return as an act of vengeance, but now they faced an even greater truth. Humanity was offering them a future, a choice. And for the first time in history, the galaxy stood at a crossroads. Would they cling to their empires, their wars, their fragile sense of power, or would they take the leap and join humanity in the next great evolution? The chamber was deathly silent. One by one, the leaders looked at one another. Fear, hope, uncertainty. For the first time in millennia, the fate of the galaxy was not determined by war, but by a single decision. And as they turned back to the human envoy, the question hung in the air. Heavier than any weapon, more powerful than any fleet. Would they accept? The silence in the chamber was almost unbearable. The leaders of the galaxy, once so confident in their positions of power, now found themselves facing an entirely new reality. Here they stood, confronted with an unimaginable opportunity. To accept humanity's offer would be to abandon the old ways, to leave behind everything they had fought for, to let go of the power that had defined their species for centuries. To reject it, however, would mean to continue down the same path, one that had brought them to the brink of irrelevance. And so, they sat in that silence, each of them grappling with the weight of the decision. The human envoy, standing unmoved, at the center of the room, appeared calm, almost indifferent. But there was a deeper presence to them, something that suggested they had seen this moment coming long ago. They had already transcended the emotions, the struggles, the internal debates that raged within the beings around them. They were the harbingers of a new age, and this was merely the final step of a journey that had spanned millennia. I understand your hesitation, the human envoy spoke again, their voice carrying a resonance that filled the chamber. But you must realize, your time is not infinite. The galaxy as it stands is on the precipice of collapse. You can either cling to the dying embers of an old empire, or you can forge something greater, together. For a moment, it seemed as though every leader in the room was frozen. The Zorath Chancellor, known for his cold pragmatism, was the first to speak. His voice rasped with skepticism, yet it carried a hint of something else. Curiosity. If humanity truly holds the power you claim, why not simply force us into submission? Why not bend the galaxy to your will? The human envoy's smile was gentle. Because we are not conquerors, Chancellor. We are architects. We do not wish to dominate. We seek only to guide you toward a future you cannot yet comprehend." For the first time, the Zorath Chancellor hesitated, his eyes narrowing. He understood that they weren't merely speaking of technology, of power, but something far more profound. Something beyond the grasp of his own race's cold, calculating logic. Next, the leader of the Andoril Coalition, a species known for their spiritual wisdom and deep connection to the cosmos, spoke. "You speak of transcendence, of an evolution beyond the stars," the Andoril leader mused. "But will we lose what makes us who we are? Our identity? Our cultures?" The envoy's gaze softened, understanding the concern. "No," they said, "you will not lose yourselves. You will evolve into something more. Each species will retain its essence. The future we offer is not one of uniformity, but of unity. You will become more than the sum of your parts, but your uniqueness will remain. It will be celebrated." The room grew even more still, and for the first time, a spark of hope seemed to ignite in the minds of the galactic leaders. Could it be true? Could humanity truly offer them a future where their struggles, their wars, their limited visions would be replaced with something greater? But as the leaders mulled over the offer, another voice rose, one that had remained silent until now. The emissary of the Varak Empire, a race known for their intellectual prowess and unparalleled strategic thinking, had remained quiet while others had spoken. But now, their voice rang out with a sharp edge, cutting through the silence. "What guarantee do we have?" the Varak emissary demanded. "How do we know that you will not leave us, just as you left the galaxy before? How do we know that you are not simply playing a game, manipulating us for some unknown purpose?" The human envoy's expression remained unreadable. Yet there was something in their eyes, something ancient and profound, that made every question seem trivial. "Because," they said softly, "we are not playing a game. We are offering you a chance. But you must choose. You must choose to accept or reject this future." Another long pause. Then, a single voice broke the silence. The voice of the prime speaker of the Varak Empire, who had been the first to question the human envoy, spoke again, though this time with a tone of respect. "Then we accept," the prime speaker said. "We accept your offer. Not out of fear, but out of the hope that there is something greater for all of us. A future where we are not bound by our past mistakes." The words echoed through the chamber, and with them, the weight of a decision that had changed the course of history. One by one, other leaders began to speak. The Andoril Coalition, the Zorath Hegemony, the Illyri Ascendancy, all gave their consent. Each leader, each species, now understood that the future could no longer be shaped by the same old tactics. The galaxy was changing, and humanity, with all its wisdom, power, and knowledge, was the key. As the final vote was cast, the human envoy's calm expression shifted, ever so slightly. It was the faintest glimmer of satisfaction, but it was enough. They had seen this moment coming, and they had always known how it would end. Humanity had not come to dominate. They had come to guide, to lead by example. And now, the galaxy had taken its first step towards something far greater than it had ever imagined. The human envoy turned to the leaders of the galaxy. "You will never be alone again," they said. "Together, we will step into the next phase of existence. A phase where boundaries are no longer limitations. A phase where all that is possible is possible." With that, the stars themselves seemed to shine brighter. Not as symbols of distant goals, but as the beginning of a new journey. One where humanity and the galaxy would walk together toward a destiny yet to be written. The galaxy had once feared humanity's return, but now it knew the truth. Humanity had always been destined to lead, not by force, but by vision. And as the final words faded into the stars, one thought echoed across the galaxy. The future had finally arrived, and the galaxy was powerless to stop it. Now that you've seen humanity's return to power, what do you think? Will the galaxy embrace this new future, or will the old ways persist? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Every great journey starts with a few brave explorers, and this one is just beginning.